Welcome to BizSugar Live. Where do your customers discover they have the problem that you solve? How do you go about researching it? When, whether, and how do they decide to buy? We all know that the buyer's journey is long, complex, and multi-channel. Yet most of our marketing reflects only the few easily researchable tactics such as search keywords, ad placements, and the like. In this presentation, Rand Fishkin is going to blow that process wide open with a path anyone can follow to understand pre-purchase behavior, the influence map. Come for the tactical tips and practical tools. Stay for the strategic approach that will give you a massive advantage over your narrowly optimizing competitors. Rand Fishkin may be best known from his time at Moz and his famous SEO Whiteboard Friday videos. He founded SEO Moz in 2003, co-founded inbound.org in 2011. SEO Moz started as a blog, turned into a consulting company, and then became a software business. Rand was CEO from 2007 to 2014. Along the way, SEO Moz became Moz, and Rand is still a supporter of the company, a large shareholder on the board of the directors. He remained a contributor into 2018 when he co-founded Spark Toro with Casey Henry. Don't miss this opportunity to gain knowledge, to up your marketing campaign. We are so proud to have you, Rand. It's all yours.
Thanks so much, Gal. I appreciate it. All right, friends, let's go ahead and get the presentation going. Share this window. All righty. Beautiful. Yes. So, all right. Oh, I think we have some auto advancing here. So we're going to have to, there we go. All right. First off, thanks so much for having me. I am very excited to be here. I am going to, I've got a lot of slides and I want to make sure that folks can see all the links, get this. So at the end of the presentation, I will make sure that this is available and you can download it. I'll send it to our lovely organizers here and they can distribute it to you. So I am passionately interested in lots of topics, obviously lots of marketing things and audience research and understanding people. And one of those kind of led me down this rabbit hole of trying to understand how conspiracy theories spread. And this is a personal passion and interest and sort of following like, oh, how did that start and how did it get to these other people and why do people pick it up? And I found this excellent blog post. This was actually from a Substack newsletter called The Reverse Idiot Funnel. I particularly like this concept explanation. And in fact, the concept was explained using an example. So the idea is here's a tweet that was sent on March 10th. This was just after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And this tweet appears to be the very first time that this theory, which became a conspiracy theory, was spread, right? So there's U.S.-run biolabs in Ukraine to target Slavic ethnic groups, which seems quite wild on its face, but this actually spread quite well. So after this tweet was deleted, the account was removed. You know, it's Twitter's misinformation, disinformation policy, right? To remove stuff that's provably false. And so this was taken down. I think the account was banned within a few hours, but didn't matter. Spread like wildfire. And the reverse idiot funnel sort of shows how it picked up by people who were both self-interested and perhaps incentivized by other parties, right? Spreading to Facebook, spreading to TikTok, lots of TikTok accounts picked it up. And then Fox News actually picked it up here in the United States. And then, of course, a number of other right-leaning publications amplified and picked that up. And then Russian and Chinese state media pick it up and made it part of the official story for why the invasion was happening. And look, you might point to a conspiracy theory thing and be like, Rand, why are you explaining this to me? This person, right, that the reverse idiot funnel calls some dumb idiot, they might be not the most brilliant marketer in the world, but they understand how to craft and amplify messages to reach their audience. They understand who the target is, how messages spread in the ecosystem, what that ecosystem looks like. I think you can say, hey, this is a a strange example, but it is an example of exactly what the target hoped, right? The message being spread would reach. In fact, in their wildest dreams, I doubt they thought state media from these major countries would pick it up. If you know your audience, if you understand the funnel that exists in your world, you will know how to market. And we are going to talk through a bunch of tactical tips and sort of, hey, do this, try this. But I think that fundamentally understanding the marketing flywheel is core to this process. And the marketing flywheel looks like this, right? You do a marketing thing. You publish a blog post, let's say. You send a tweet. You run a webinar. You start a podcast. And then you boost that thing's reach, right? You try and amplify it across your social channels. You try to get it to rank in search engines. You send it out in your email newsletter. And hopefully you engage the audience that comes to it, right? So maybe your email newsletter gets bigger because more people subscribe because they think the content is interesting and they want to follow what you're doing, or they follow you on Twitter, or they link to your blog post. And now you've improved your algorithmic signals. We could say that's YouTube's discovery algorithm, or it's TikTok's algorithm, or it's Facebook's algorithm, or Google's algorithm. And next time you do it, you get a higher return on investment, right? This fundamentally is how marketing works. It's how a flywheel spins. And audience research is a huge part of this, right? That tells us which tactics and channels should we try? What should we actually try doing? Should we publish that blog post? Should we launch a podcast? It tells us how to distribute our messages, right? It tells us, hey, where are we going to go to reach our audience? How are we going to get that boost? How are we going to bring people to our site? And it tells us whose attention we can earn and what earns their attention, right? What is engaging to them? It shows us what they find interesting enough to influence those algorithms that will get people hopefully finding us more easily next time we do this marketing process, and how we improve. This is the fundamentals of audience research, right? It is all influencing the flywheel so that we can get this process to spin with less friction, making it easier and easier, which means we get higher and higher return on the same investment. That's the whole goal of marketing, right? If you're building a marketing strategy, you should be aiming for a marketing flywheel that scales with decreasing friction. Now, I'm going to talk through some of the mistakes, and then we're going to get into tactics and ways to fix this. But the first mistake that I see many, many folks making is assuming that your customers, the customers for your product, and the audience are the same people. So audience kind of falls into four groups, right? Current customers, that's people who bought your products or services. There's potential customers, people who are right customer fits, and you probably want to influence them, you want to reach them. There's potential amplifiers, right? Journalists, media, people with powerful social accounts, podcasters, video creators, folks who might invite you to present on their webinar, conference and event organizers, even sources of influence not in your field, the Wall Street Journal, right? The New York Times, some local TV channel that might cover you. And then a broader community, right? People who consume content in your field but aren't potential customers, and community members, right? People who might be part of consuming your content, but they don't really broadcast it. Now, if you spend all your time ignoring these people and just putting energy into current customers and potential customers, you're going to have a very rough time building a marketing engine that scales with decreasing friction and earns amplification, because the content for current and potential customers is very different. The things that they want to consume, the things that you are trying to, get them to do that will have them convert to a paying subscriber or convert to a buyer of your product, convert to a user of your service. It's not the same. It's not the same as what amplifiers and community are interested in. Now, I like to visualize things, right? So what I've done here is tried to take a sort of Venn diagram-like approach. So if your broad community, right, the whole world of people who care about your particular ecosystem, and inside that, potential customers, people who might buy from you, and current customers, which are hopefully a small subset of that. And then you have amplifiers. And you'll notice that with amplifiers, the overlap is with the entire community, some current customers, probably a very small number, some potential customers. And this group, this is where the most successful marketing happens because it appeals to the amplifiers and potential customers. So it brings people to you, right, that are both maybe going to buy from you and potentially going to amplify your message. This is why if you target just that blue and green zone, your marketing doesn't do nearly as well. All right, mistake number 2. I want to start this by saying I'm a huge fan of surveys and interviews. I think they're core to audience research. We do them at SparkToro. I would never recommend against doing them. However, surveys and interviews always fall prey to misleading bias. So here's SparkToro, right? We do our own surveys and interviews. We do them every 6 months with current and existing customers and people who've quit and all that kind of stuff. But when we ran this survey last year, we got answers from 80 of our paying subscribers. I think we probably had about 600-700 subscribers at the time. So, not quite, maybe around 10% of folks replied to this survey. Right. So we asked them questions like, before SparkToro, how did you get data about your audience's online behavior? Okay, that's a reasonable question. And we got great feedback, right? We looked through here at sort of what problem is SparkToro replacing for people. And we got wonderful data, but it is very biased data, right? Very, very unique to only a certain group of people. When we ask questions like this, we like to use Typeform. We tend to see, it's one of my tactical tips, we tend to see that with Typeform, I get about maybe a 15% boost in completion rate and answer rate versus like a Google survey or SurveyMonkey or those kinds of things. SurveyMonkey is powerful for other things, but I really like Typeform's UI. It seems to get people through the process the best. Only people who paid for SparkToro between these 2 dates last year would even possibly see this survey. So it can't really tell us a lot about audience that didn't become customers, right? The people who chose not to subscribe to SparkToro, maybe they have fundamentally different use cases and beliefs. And if we don't get data about them, we're not going to know. It won't tell us anything about people who canceled. It won't tell us about potentially great fit customers who've just never heard of us. They don't know who SparkToro is yet. Maybe that's a different audience and they have different attributes. You can see the challenge here. This kind of bias means that surveys and interviews can't reach everyone we care about, right? They can only tell us about the people that we have reached. So I looked on LinkedIn and there's 32,000 people whose profiles, their bios or whatever, the job title or role or skills includes the words audience research, right? So this is what they do for a living, supposedly. And only one SparkToro respondent used those words in their bio. So I don't think this is maybe a representative data sample. This is a huge blind spot of people that we are not capturing, right? Clearly our audience, the audience we've attracted is very different. And so what we need to do if we want to have good information about the people who use audience research in their bio, or in any business's case, aren't in the group that you already captured and are in these blind spots, you have got to get passively collected data at scale. So I'll, the very best way of doing this, right? The best way of getting data about all these people, right? These people who include audience research in their bio on LinkedIn, right? Maybe, gosh, Sarah Collins, she's in audience research in Chicago and also does content marketing. Seems like a perfect kind of person for what we're doing. Well, what do I think here? I think the best thing that we could possibly do, like the thing that would give us the most data, I don't recommend this. Don't do this. I'm just pointing it out as a hilarious and ridiculous example, is we get all of these people's, right, like home addresses. We break into their houses. We steal their phone and their unlock code. Or maybe if we're more ethical, we just knock on the door. Excuse me, could I have your phone? Could you tell me the unlock code? And then we go through and look at everything they subscribe to on YouTube, every podcast they listen to, every website that they regularly visit and have bookmarked. We look through their browser history. We look at all their social accounts. So who do they follow on Twitter? Who do they follow on LinkedIn? What groups are they part of? All those kinds of things. And then we aggregate them together and we look at the overlap and we say, aha, now we understand a whole bunch of, percentile data. So 62% work at companies of this size and 13% have these audience attributes and 12% follow this person on social. That's the ideal world. It's, first off, highly unethical, super illegal. I don't recommend that anyone does this. And the manual work involved is ludicrous, so nobody tries it anyway. But the good news is that tons and tons of people, in fact, what I would term a reasonable sample set for nearly any human group on at least the English language speaking internet, puts this data online publicly. They have public Twitter accounts. They have public YouTube accounts. They have public LinkedIn accounts. They have public Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts. And so just like Google crawls all this data, right? Google's crawling all these profiles and downloading all this stuff. You can as well. You can go visit all the profiles of these people, whether you're have a LinkedIn account or not, and you can see all of these attributes, things like job titles and roles, things like what they follow and subscribe to, groups that they're part of, topics and interests they're interested in, all of that stuff. You can see all their posts, their public posts, right? And what content they share and talk about and hashtags they use, all this great stuff. That is what I'm calling passively collected data at scale. When you do this for hundreds or thousands of people in your audience, you get this incredibly robust, beautiful picture of exactly what's going on with this group, right? You can do this manually, right? You could run a search in whatever, Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or TikTok, Instagram, whatever you want, and then try to manually tease out data from a significant sample set. This is completely possible. It is a real pain, but in fact, when we were starting SparkToro, we saw lots of clever marketers and agencies doing something like this. Most of them built something programmatic to make it a little easier, right? They'd have some engineers go and code something up. But you can do this. And my favorite way to combine these processes is, well, I'm going to talk about tools, but before I do that, I want to walk through like the process I use. And that is to start by interviewing. I like to interview customers and non-buying audiences, right? People who are just in our ecosystem or universe. So let's say you're Pelliconi, which is like a packaging design brand, right? Out of Europe. I believe they're based in Italy. And you might ask questions, right? They might ask questions in interviews to a handful of selected customers and community members and people who are in their universe about biggest pain points and what topics do you think are important, right? You could ask these informally at a conference or event. You could say, hey, if you were going to change vendors to another packaging design company, why would that be? Once you have those interview questions answered, I like taking that. That's when I build surveys, right? Those surveys are designed to validate the data that we gathered from the interview process and to expand on it, right? To give us more statistical significance and to give us more answers to sort of at scale types of questions. So how would you describe your role, or how did you first hear about us, or imagine describing our product to a friend, what would you say? All those kinds of things. And you can distribute these in a variety of ways. You can use your email list. That's generally what we use. We also use social channels, so like Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. And if you want MailChimp's SurveyMonkey's audience feature, if you haven't tried it, is surprisingly affordable. So you can run large-scale surveys of consumers, for example, in the United States for a few $1,000s. That's not to say it's cheap, but it is achievable and possible. And so this is giving you that data at scale. You can also run surveys on your website. So there's a bone broth maker out of Austin, Texas called Kettle on Fire, and they have this great, they're using Typeform as well. I think they found the same thing that I did, which is that it works quite well. And they'll ask, right, hey, how did you hear about us? Which publication sent you to us? Which influencer? Quite a good process. What I would say about this, though, again, selection bias is a problem, and also people don't have a great memory around this. So, a lot of the times when we see folks asking questions like these in survey format, you'll find this funny thing where someone was describing this to me actually just yesterday. He was like, yeah, we asked our customers, how did you hear about us? And a lot of them said Facebook ads. And we don't run any Facebook ads, and we have no real presence on Facebook. So it made me nervous that, like 20% of our customers said Facebook ads, because, people are just not perfect at remembering and recalling, how did you hear about us? And Facebook ads sounds like a way someone might, so a lot of people will just type it in. In any case, you have to take a little bit of this with a grain of salt, but oftentimes when you hear the which blog or publication or which health influencer, that does get you some salient, useful information. If you have emails, you can ask them directly. I rarely do this, usually like once a year at most, because this produces a ludicrous amount of email. So I sent this from my email address to, I think it was a couple thousand sort of folks who use SparkToro. Oh, no, it was more than that. I think it was almost 10,000. And we got nearly a 10% response rate. So people who wrote back with an answer. Oh, yeah, there you go. So 700 replies, which I then manually categorized into a spreadsheet. And Casey and I use that data, Casey's my co-founder at SparkToro, to prioritize our product and marketing roadmap. Like basically to say, these are the most important. How important is it that we, for example, build up more case studies versus add this feature to the product and those kinds of things. And gosh, 36 people told us this, but 70 people told us that. It's that kind of thing. Those open-ended questions I would send as a single, request like I did in this, right? Super quick questions, even a 2-word answer is appreciated. Again, you can steal this format. Please have at it. So we ask, like, how much value do you get from your account? What are you using it for? What if anything holds you back? This process, again, super, super useful for that customer audience research. So once you do the survey and interview process and the email questions, anything that appeals to you in here that answers the questions you need answered, you get attributes like how people describe themselves and what they talk about, what they pay attention to, interests, hobbies, passions, job titles, right? All that kind of stuff. That is what unlocks the passive data at scale, right? The ability to basically go to a tool like SparkToro, and I don't like self-promoting only us. So, I would say there's other alternatives to, Audience with an S, Helixa.ai. If you have a big budget, BrandWatch has an enterprise version of like an audience intelligence, audience research tool that's quite good. So there are other products out there. Some people really like Demographics Pro. It does some other things, but that can work as well. And once you have these attributes, you can then go to something like SparkToro, the other ones I mentioned, and say, my audience follows the social account XYZ, right? Lots of them told us in the interview that was a big influencer for them. Great, we're going to plug that in. My audience uses these words in their bio. Lots of them told us that they are packaging designers. So we're going to type in packaging design into, right, uses the words in the bio. It's those kinds of things that you are able to do once you have that data. And now you can analyze each individual audience, right? Each sort of persona that you've classified from your survey and interview stuff. This is what unlocks data about the whole market, not just the people that you reach, not just the ones you've surveyed, and it unlocks kinds of data that very frankly you cannot get from surveys and interviews alone. This is really core to audience research at scale and having excellent answers to those questions. So, this data that you could manually gather from a LinkedIn or Twitter, this is FollowerWonk, by the way, which is a tool I like a lot. I have a subscription to it. I like it so much that, as Gail mentioned, when I was CEO at Moz, I actually bought the company and it spun back out into an independent entity. But you can get this great data, right, from individual accounts and crawling them, and you can aggregate them yourself, or you can use something like SparkToro, which sort of aggregates, here's 12,845 people who use the hashtag packaging, and they follow these accounts, and they have these attributes, and they visit these websites most, and here are their demographics, right? And that kind of data is what really, really informs the marketing flywheel process. So you go right back to the beginning and you're like, aha, now I know where to market. Aha, now I know what content to produce. Aha, now I know what hashtags to target with our ads. All those kinds of things. All right, number 3, you focused on limited parts of the buyer journey. No, this is another big problem. I'll show you what I mean. So behavioral psychology has this concept called the influence map. I like the influence map a lot. I think it's very, very useful. It's essentially behavioral psychologists who try and understand visually, right? They will try and visually understand it, how a group of people interacts with a problem and what changes their behavior. One of my favorite examples of this, well, let me walk you through, right, what it is first. So the idea is that people, whatever, an organization discovers they have a problem, society discovers that they have a problem, individual people have a problem and they want to solve it by buying something. And then they become aware of brands or potential solutions in the space. They learn more, and then they decide to, investigate a process by which usually they're going to have a transaction or completion. So in the world of behavioral psychology, one of my favorite examples is the National Park Service. So National Park Service in the United States, of course, the US has a bunch of amazing national parks all over, but in the West, at least, forest fires, wildfires are a huge problem. And many of them, especially in the decades prior, right, the last 3-4 decades, have been started on accident, hopefully on accident, by human beings, right? By people who go out in the wilderness intending to enjoy nature and appreciate the park, but they irresponsibly set a campfire, or they, light up a cigarette, or they set off some fireworks, whatever it is. And so the National Park Service worked with behavioral psychologists to try and understand, like, where do people learn about these things? And at each step of the journey, how can I influence the change, right? And so what they found in here was essentially that, hey, the most effective place where we could impact change from a behavioral psychology perspective is when you go into the park, you stop at the ranger station in order to get a pass, right? A day pass or, an overnight pass, camping pass, whatever, to be able to stay at the park. And if that person mentions to you, hey, do you have any fireworks, or do you smoke, or are you planning on starting a fire? And they talk to you a little bit, 2 minutes less, about fire safety and how wildfires start and what they've done to the park, that has a massive impact on behavior change throughout the park. There you go. Very simple. There's lots of ways they could do it. They could put up signs. They could have something, at the campsites. They could restrict, entry for certain types of goods. But they found that this conversation was the most effective way to change behavior. And for marketers, the same thing is true, right? We want to figure out, where did our potential customers learn that they might have a need for what we do? Where are they first exposed to products and services in the space? What do they pay attention to, right? As they're trying to learn more, like which sources, and where do they make their purchase decision? How do they make that purchase decision? And at each step of this journey, the opportunity to impact behavior changes. It is different. It's not the same thing, when people are sort of, whatever, learning about Japanese donabes for cooking rice, so a product I purchased last year, right? I first learned about it from an email newsletter. Then I went to Google and learned about it. Then I read more stuff about it from a bunch of, cooking blogs and Japanese cooking websites. And then I went to a source that I trusted and I, used the one that they recommended. All right, here we go, right? Like it is different at every different stage. Our job, right? The marketing job that we have is essentially to target the right audience in the right places with the right message. So if I really need to succeed at problem discovery, right? Like people just don't even know what a donabe is. Well, these are the places that I need to be present in. That's where I want to focus my marketing efforts. I don't want to overinvest in channels that are further down the line because that's not where my opportunity lies. And the same thing, I see this over and over again in audience research, is that essentially, you're investing in whatever it is, SEO and content and paid search and social ads, and organic social, and you're doing it in a way that is probably high quality, good efforts, but it is not targeting the right audience in the right places. It's not targeting the people who can amplify to reach the audience we want to reach and change the behavior we want to change. This is marketing's job, right? Essentially, going back to our reverse idiot funnel here, if 80% of the audience that, these sources are trying to influence, read, watch, subscribe to Fox News, it doesn't pay to go spend a bunch of energy pitching, the leading German magazine, Die Welt. That's not going to affect anything, right? That doesn't change anyone's opinion in this particular audience. It's about targeting the right people in the right parts of the funnel, and not just people, publications, sources of influence. One trick, little tactical trick here, is that branded and unbranded search volume, by which I mean keywords that contain a brand name versus search keywords that don't contain a brand name in Google search might actually help. And Google Trends is a beautiful and free tool for this. So here we go. Airbnb versus vacation rentals. So Airbnb obviously is the branded search term for the Airbnb company, and vacation rentals was the unbranded keyword. Now take a look. You see down here, 2008, 2009, 2010, lots more people searching for vacation rentals than Airbnb, and probably 20 times more. So in 2009, Airbnb's focus had to be brand awareness within the world of vacation rentals. They wanted people who knew about vacation rentals, wanted to buy one, wanted to put one on, put up their property on a vacation rental site, to know about Airbnb. But by 2013, they're already bigger than the market, right? Airbnb is bigger than all the search terms for vacation rentals. So now they probably need to focus on problem discovery. Hey, vacation rentals exist. Hey, this is a thing that you can do. Do you own a second home? Do you have a vacation property that you might want to rent out? Today, there's so much knowledge, right? Airbnb is a universally known brand. And so probably it's further education and solution seeking, capturing the portion of the potential market that hasn't yet converted, and trying to get folks who are considering alternatives to choose Airbnb instead. Different parts of the funnel because they're in different sectors of the market and sectors of maturity in their space. This could work for you too. You can look at not just your own brand versus unbranded search terms, but competitors as well. All right, mistake number 4. You ignored your audience's sources of influence. Ooh. All right, so I mentioned rice donabes. It's going to be a food-centric example for me. This is a magazine I subscribe to. It's an online newsletter I subscribe to. They also have a great website called Taste. And Taste sends out, I think they send this to me once a week. So this is salsa macha, which is like a spicy condiment from Mexico. I had never actually had it before. I don't know if it's super popular, but I certainly hadn't heard of it until I got this email, and I was like, ooh, interesting. I read about it, right? I read the article here. I was like, huh. Fatty, punchy, easy to access, simple to pronounce, salsa macha was fated to make a splash in the United States. You know what I did? I went out and I bought some salsa macha that was recommended to me by Taste at the bottom of this article because I was curious and I liked it a lot. I think we already went through a bottle. So before I did that, why did I purchase? Well, I subscribed to Taste for 2 years, so I'm super familiar with them. I subscribe to them especially to learn about products. When they recommend things to me, I tend to like them. So I like their recommendations. And when I've ordered stuff in the past, they've been solid. So I trust them, right? I've learned that they can be relied on. Plus, they don't have any vested interest. They're not promoting one brand over another. They're not using affiliate links. They don't point me to Amazon. They're impartial. This is an editorial recommendation. Plus, it's already in my inbox. I don't have to go anywhere to find this information, right? This is already coming to me. I've already said I'm sort of interested in this world, this universe of learning about new interesting foods. this is what I believe, that publications, people, podcasts, video creators, social accounts, events, email, newsletters that match these criteria. They're familiar to your audience. They are liked by them. They are trusted. They are perceived as impartial, and they're easily available. These criteria are the best marketing opportunities, full stop. That's it. I would rather have these sources saying positive things, recommending my product, than ranking number one in Google or having my ads splashed all over the internet or, naming rights to a football stadium. This, in my opinion, is where it's at. The criteria I just don't really care that much about are things like, well, but how many social followers does Taste have? We have some. It's decent. But it's not huge. How much traffic do they get to their website? What about their domain authority? I know I created this at Moz, but I don't care about that in this equation. I don't care where they rank in Google's results. In fact, Taste ranks very poorly. You familiar with the acronym IDGAF? Well, IDGAF, I don't gamble against fallacious metrics. I look for marketing that really reaches what I'm going for. So if I can get an editorial endorsement from publications and people, sources of influence that reach my audience, that is the most valuable marketing I can get. If I want to reach people whose profiles include packaging or use the hashtag Packaging World, Packaging Digest, and Future Packaging, and Packaging News, these sources, look at these numbers. 34% of the audience whose profile includes packaging in their job title or role, they follow Packaging World. I'd never heard of Packaging World. I don't know anything about it, but I completely believe this, right? That seems credible. Gosh, if I could get their Facebook page to talk about me, if I could get an article on their website that they promote across their social channels, that would be awesome. And they have an event every year. Maybe I can be a speaker there, and they do a regular webinar series. I wonder if I could be a presenter. Maybe I could co-host with them. Maybe we could do some co-marketed content. It doesn't matter what. That is where I can reach my people with an incredibly effective message at the right time. That's what I'm looking for. So how do you do this? How do you find what the influential sources in your field are? Well, you can absolutely ask right through the surveys and interviews, but the idea here is that I want to find them from a number of tool sources as well, right? Tool and data sources. So I've got a few that I'll mention here. Obviously, focus a little bit on SparkToro because I'm most familiar with it, but other sources are good here too. So 518 profiles with the words privacy advocate in their bio, 11% shared or engaged with threatpost.com in the past quarter. Okay, great. Let's use that. That is excellent data. And once you have one website, so you could look through your Google Analytics and see, oh, threatpost.com sent me a bunch of valuable traffic for my cybersecurity business, whatever it is. Great. Plug it into SimilarWeb, which this is awesome. It is free. So, SparkToro has a free version that lets you run a few searches. SimilarWeb lets you run a lot of searches for free as well. And when you scroll down in SimilarWeb, you can click on that competitors section and see, here are websites that are visited by people who visit threatpost.com. Same thing in SparkToro, right? I can see, people who read ThreatPost tend to engage with, share Krebs on Security and Tech Republic and HelpNet Security and Computer Weekly and CIO.com. Awesome, right? This is great. This is basically the, people who bought X also bought Y. People who pay attention to A also pay attention to B and C and D. That's what you want as a marketer. Social accounts, same thing, right? I can look at, okay, 26% of people who are privacy advocates follow Brian Krebs. I mentioned his website before. And once you have one social account, you can go to Twitter. Twitter will show you similar accounts followed by similar people. LinkedIn will do the same. You can obviously get this data in follower wonk as well, right? So I can see that Swift on security and dark reading, I think, if I remember correctly, was it Swift on security? I feel like they're doing a special with Netflix now. Podcasts. So podcasts are a huge marketing channel for us. It's probably not true for everybody in every sector, but if your audience pays attention to podcasts, which I think is now a quarter of Americans are listening to a podcast a week or more, podcasts can be really, really great. Threat Post podcast, super popular with the privacy advocate crowd. I would pitch to be a guest on there. I would pitch a topic to them. I would pitch to sponsor, right? To pay, right? Have an ad on there. Podcast discovery, unfortunately, super hard. Google Podcasts is not good for this. Listen Notes is has a great index, but when I'm searching for privacy advocates, what I want to see is what do they subscribe to, not what podcasts have the word privacy advocate in there. A little frustrating. YouTube channels, right? SparkToro does this as well. You can look for, okay, privacy advocate. Which one call it is good for this? To audience with the S. So I can see here, all right, Black Hat is the most technical and relevant information security event series. 8% of privacy advocates subscribe to this YouTube channel. I want to be there. In fact, I could probably go to my Google ads and just take a list of these and be like, yes, this is where I want to advertise against in YouTube. YouTube search, again, it's not good for this. If you search for privacy advocates, you get not the right things, not the channels that privacy advocates subscribe to, but rather the keywords. You can look through press sources too. So, sort of mainstream media, the EFF and TechCrunch and Wired and New York Times and that kind of thing. Events is another one that I'd go after. SparkToro does not have this, but Google's event search is semi-decent, right? And Eventbrite, if an event is on Eventbrite, they're actually pretty good. I like them a lot. So this could be good. This can help you discover potential events, in a geographic area or around a topic, sometimes online too. All right. Mistake number 5. When we use our language, the language that we like, instead of our audience's language, right? We don't talk about topics the way they talk about them. We don't talk about products the way they talk about them. This is problematic. So here's Delcor. They're in the packaging design world again. I know you can't quite tell from this website because it's insanely corporate speak. One case packer, all shipper styles, full line changeover in 8 minutes or less, modular design made to fit any speed or style, LSP series case packer. Whew. Friends, I don't honestly know what's being sold here. I think I'm a reasonably smart person. I've spent some time researching the packaging design world, and that sounds like internal corporate speak that some executive at Delcor was like, no. This is how I want to describe our products. Oh boy. I don't think so, friends. My recommendation is to speak the same language that your customers speak. So when you survey them, when you interview them, listen, collect that data, see how they're talking about what you do. That question that I pointed out earlier from the SparkToro survey, where we asked our customers, hey, if you were describing us to a third party, to a friend, what would you say? That gets really good, especially if you see lots of responses including the same things. Especially if you see lots of responses including the same things from people who are loyal, long-term subscribers who love your product. So in this case, you can also do this type of research by looking at, I went to LinkedIn, I searched at packaging design, and I went through a ton of the top most engaging, most followed, most commented on posts, because packaging design on LinkedIn is huge. It's a little smaller on Twitter. There's not a ton of it on Facebook and Instagram, but here we go. I mean, you can get beautiful, excellent data from this. And then of course, I can look in SparkToro and see things like, okay, plastic waste, sustainable packaging, packaging solutions, circular economy. These are terms that folks in this world are familiar with, that they're talking about in the last quarter, that are popular with them. I can use that language. I can use it in my content. I can use it in my social posts. I can use it in my product language. Not just good for SEO, it's good for conversion. Okay, number 6. Getting to the end here, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. Rather than doing audience research, you can, if you so choose, outsource all your targeting to Facebook and Google. Basically, just let them sort it out. So this is very popular. Digital advertising market is, hundreds of billions of dollars a year, and a bunch of that is wasted. Real talk, a bunch of that is wasted. So here's P&G cutting $200 million in ad spend and increasing its reach. What? Why is that? Because maybe Google and Facebook don't have your best interests at heart. Here's Chase. They had running across mostly Google and Facebook's display networks, had their ads on 400,000 sites. Then they reduced that to 5,000. Same results. Here's Uber wasting $100 million on digital ad campaigns a couple of years ago. Actually, I think this was 2020. And, eBay doing the same thing a number of years before that. You can read all of these articles and check out the case studies and see how these mistakes were made. But the reality is programmatic advertising does not have your best interests at heart. It has the bottom line shareholders' interests of Google, Facebook, Amazon in its interests. Brian Chesky, CEO of Airbnb, who we were talking about earlier, this is from their quarterly earnings statement last year. What the pandemic showed is we can take marketing down to zero and still have 95% of the same traffic as the year before. The report showed Airbnb cut its spend on brand and performance marketing by 58% and still got almost all the same traffic and conversions. What was going on there? Well, I think it can be explained well by the parable of the pizzeria. If you don't know this story, one of my favorites. So, this is a pizzeria in Milan, in Italy, and let's say Sabina, the owner of this pizzeria, hands out flyers, different colored flyers to 3 neighborhood scamps. She's like, okay, a green one, a red one, and a blue one. And no, it's Italy. We should do a green, a red, and a white. So she hands these flyers out. She says, hey, distribute these around the neighborhood. They all have a different coupon code. And, the little scamps run along and they distribute the flyers and people come into the pizzeria and the owner notices that after a month, God, that kid with the green flyer, like everybody who's coming in here is using the green flyer. Wow. I mean, that scamp must be a hustler. Like he's just going to all the right places. He's distributing his flyers. I'm just going to use him. And it's so effective that 6 months in, she's like, wow, I'm just going to use you from now on. She goes to her accountant and the accountant says, yeah, business is only up about 5%. And the owner's like, no, that can't be. Everybody's coming in with the new flyer. It must be very effective. So one day she says, I'm going to follow this kid and see what he's doing. She walks out of the restaurant. She sees the little scamp distributing his green flyers. He ducks into an alleyway right around the corner. And anybody who looks like they're going into the pizzeria, he runs out and hands them the green flyer. He's not distributing the flyer. He's just waiting until someone who is already going to buy from the pizzeria is walking in, and then he gives them the flyer. And this is exactly how Google and Facebook and Amazon advertising make a ton of their money. It is not incremental lift. It is merely they know programmatically from behaviors across the web that people are about to buy salsa matcha or they're about to get this Japanese rice tonabe. And so they're like, hey, let's show them the ad. And then in your analytics, in your attribution, what does it look like? It looks like Google sent you all your converting traffic and Facebook was part of 90% of buyer journeys. Why work hard to make more sales when I could just take credit for sales that were going to happen anyway? To be honest, friends, I don't mean to suggest it's some nefarious plot. It is just the best way to make money if you control advertising, right? If you're sort of a monopoly, duopoly across the internet's ad landscape. This is fundamentally how it works. And you will never know how much they are actually contributing unless you cut off some of that spend, unless you reduce your spend down to zero. When you use audience research, right? When you do use the tactics that we talked about today, finding those sources of influence, seeing what your customers actually talk about, going out, you will potentially get far more lift for a much lower price. It is work. You can't just outsource it all to Google and Facebook, but the cost of customer acquisition can fall dramatically. The idea here is pretty simple, right? The whole idea of influence, not influencer, because I'm not just talking about the six-pack abs dudes on Facebook or on Instagram and TikTok, but the influence marketing flywheel works like this, right? You find a source that reaches your audience. Podcast, a YouTube channel, a webinar, and then you provide unique value that earns their attention, right? You wow that audience in that place. Could be a tweet, could be a YouTube video, could be a co-marketed event, and you bring them to your site, right? You're trying to make their audience into your audience, right? You are capturing them, and now hopefully they're subscribing to you. And so the next time you do this, when you amplify it, it gets easier and easier, and you get more return on investment each time. And you're in the places that your audience knows, likes, trusts, or they're easily accessible to them. This fundamentally is a very different marketing strategy than performance advertising or SEO, but it works, right? A couple examples. Here's Packaging Europe. They Rabo Research, which sells data to a bunch of EU agribusinesses, conducted some research and then did PR outreach and got placed in Packaging Europe, which they know their readers, their customers pay attention to. Here's Neil Patrick Harris, national treasure, actor, Tony Award winner, and to spur interest in his new sort of lifestyle newsletter, Neil co-created content with Inside Hook, which reaches a lot of folks in the sort of beverage industry, and lots of folks signed up for Wondercade from this. Here's Cosmo Sophie Boyden, a writer there, partnering with Delphinia Hotels to write this piece about Sardinia. Again, it's a win for Cosmo. They get the content and they get their writer paid, and Delphinia Hotels gets their properties covered. Here's Cyber Six Gill working with ThreatPost to do a co-branded webinar. This sort of stuff, right? Finding that shared value between the brand, right? You want publication X to amplify your brand. What could you do with them that would earn you that coverage? Could you be a guest on their podcast? Could you be one of their webinar speakers? Maybe you could sponsor their email newsletter, publish research that they cover, run a joint survey together, get quoted in an article. Anything you can think of that provides value for them and is likely to bring people from their content over to your brand, or at least make people aware of your brand and product. This is exactly how SparkToro does this, right? Our little startup, we're only 3 people. We've only been around a couple of years, but you can see, right, when we get bumps, we were featured on a podcast. We got interviewed on YouTube channels. We were written about in email newsletters and blogs. We did a webinar together, and this has produced incredible results for us. I think it might work for you as well. So thank you very much. As I mentioned, I will make sure the slides are available. We've got about 10 minutes for Q&A here. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Okay. Very interesting. All right. So, you know Joel Labava, and he's the franchise king. He said that you and he had exchanged emails here and over the years, and thanks for all you do and for hiring Amanda. Wow. And he has a question. Why can't I get it? Why can't I figure out how to use SparkToro to help my business? He's in the franchising.
The question is, why can't I figure out?
Yeah, he's having trouble figuring it out. This might not be the best place to kind of...
Oh, sure. Yeah, please, by all means. I am happy to answer that question. I think the best way to do it is tell me what you're trying to do. Email rand@sparktoro.com. SparkToro is not right for everyone. Absolutely not. So yeah, please. I'm happy to help, but I'm rand@sparktoro.com, and I can certainly help in customized ways too.
Okay, so Suran says thank you. And Martin asked, what is the difference between a marketing wheel and a marketing funnel?
Yeah, so I think the marketing funnel is also a useful visual, right? It's essentially saying we have this many people coming to, seeing our brand across the web, right? Seeing all of our ads, hearing about us on various channels. This many of them make their way to, our website, so the funnel gets narrower. This many of them make their way to the pricing page. We convert this many to paying subscribers or to buying customers, and then we retain and resell to, a smaller proportion of those. And that funnel is a useful visualization. I like it. I've used it before. It sort of tells you how you're doing at each stage of the, sort of audience capture, customer capture process. But it is not like the marketing flywheel, which is essentially saying what tactical thing and what strategies am I repeating over and over to get people, into my funnel. So they're fundamentally different concepts, but can certainly pair together nicely.
Okay, so I'm muting myself in between because there are apparently some problems with the audio. It is raining here. Martin said that he would like to talk with you about privacy issues, value for value, and podcasting 2.0 someday in the future. Hopefully he got your email, but if he didn't, he can get it from me.
Absolutely, yes. Happy to chat about all those things. I used privacy advocates as an example. I'm not actually one myself. I don't have expertise in that area, but yeah, certainly we've had to do lots of things on SparkToro's side to sort of anonymize and aggregate data. So yes, happy to discuss it.
All right, so you know Eileen Smith probably. She says she loved the examples you shared today. And you seem to have got so much information packed in there that we haven't gotten a lot of questions. Why don't you tell our audience the best way to reach you or to find out more about SparkToro?
Yeah. So in terms of SparkToro itself, I mentioned there's a free version. I would also, suggest folks check out similarweb.com, which is a great resource. You can check out Follower Wonk, which I mentioned, Google Trends, right? All these tools. And I will make sure that this presentation is available to everyone. It has all the links in there, including to the examples and some of the research that I pointed to. In terms of getting in touch with me, I am most active personally on Twitter, where I'm at Randfish. I also post more sort of professional exclusive content on LinkedIn, usually once or twice a week. And you can also reach out to me, as I mentioned, via email. I'm happy to answer any questions, rand@sparktoro.com.
Okay, great. I think it's SimilarWeb that gives estimated traffic. I want to throw this out to people. Estimated traffic is estimated, and it only counts the top keyword phrases, top traffic ones. And so, for example, when I compare it to real traffic, it's only about 10%. And so keep that in mind. If you're going to go use estimates, that's not mean that's the real traffic for that website. I want to thank Rand so much for being here and remind everyone that you can see all the webinars, all the replays, links to all the information, anything Rand wants to give me, I'll put in the blog post. And you can get to all of them by going to the BizSugar blog at blog.bizsugar.com/webinars. Thank you so much, Rand. I really appreciate you being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.